Yeah, let's get started. I think it's time.
Very good, thanks. Welcome everybody. Thank you all very much for joining. My name is Rohit Khanna. I'm the manager of ESMAP at the World Bank, and we're very pleased to organize this event today, which is launching the Access to Modern Energy Cooking Services report that we have put together with a number of very good partners who are all on the call here with us today. This is an agenda that is extremely important. It's one full of contradictions. It's a persistent problem, the lack of access, and yet it's invisible. It is essential to resolve given the huge impacts, and yet often neglected by policymakers. There are huge and significant benefits, and yet chronically underfunded. And that is why I'm really proud that at the World Bank, through ESMAP, we are fighting this challenge on two fronts. One is on data analytics knowledge, which is the subject of today's event. And we feel that it's really important for policymakers to have that the analysis and data to make sound policy choices. And on the second front, financing. And many of you know we launched the Clean Cooking Fund a year ago, and last week the first project was financed from that Clean Cooking Fund. And in fact, it's the largest World Bank operation on clean cooking in Africa, in Rwanda. That project was approved by the bank's board last week. So battle being fought on two fronts. There's a lot more to be done, but we're very proud that of where we are going. And we think really with the partnerships we have with Loughborough University, with the MECS program, with the Clean Cooking Alliance, with the WHO, and with so many of you who are on the call with us today, that we really can take on this issue of access to clean cooking in a way that reverses the rather unfortunate annual bad news from the SDG 7 tracking that we get every year. And I really hope that gradually over time, those graphs will show real change. And I think we really now have the tools to do that. So with that, I'm going to hand over to my very good friend and colleague, Frank van der Vleuten from the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Frank, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rohit, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be in this meeting. I hope all of you are safe. You're doing well in these strange times. In some countries, like in ours, there's sort of the threat of the second wave coming up. So it's I think we're all working in a somewhat strange environment. I'm sitting in the attic at home. And I saw some people have really nice backgrounds with sitting in front of a garden, but apparently that's not real. You'll see that later in the session. I'm really glad to be in this session today, and happy to moderate the discussion. The topic of clean cooking is very close to my heart, as many of you know. It's one of the most important challenges. I don't know what's that, but it's a good reminder to mute when you're not speaking. And the topic of clean cooking is one of the most important challenges in the energy sector. Clean cooking is a cornerstone in everybody's life. Traditional cooking energy has major impacts, as we all know, on poverty, on gender, on health, on forests, on climate. And at the same time, the topic doesn't get the attention that it really needs. To set the context, maybe it's good to stress that currently, we're really in a good position to make clean cooking a top priority. A couple of points I'd like to mention. Over the past decades, and then I'm talking maybe 20, 30 years, cook stoves and fuel markets have developed a whole range of solutions. Improved biomass stoves, gasifiers, biogas systems, bottled gas, electric cooking. And you even see dynamics in relation to pre-cooked meals, people changing diets. So there's a whole range of technical options available, business cases related to that. At the same time, I feel the development community has really built the capacity and the programs to support the accelerated penetration of these type of solutions. We've been involved, and I've been involved myself, in the NDEF program, in the domestic biogas work by SNV and HIVOS, the ESMAP work, the Clean Cooking Alliance work. There's a whole range of people working on how can we best support these markets that really offer the solutions. So this is really the time when governments and finance needs to step in a bigger way. We see an important role, and very happy and agree with you completely, Rohit, with the launch of the Clean Cooking Fund, and in particular the first approval last week of the Rwanda proposal. We're also very happy to see that the WHO with the UN partners and the World Bank and others has taken the initiative to start a health and energy platform of action to bring new leadership to the sector. So it's really, I think it's the right time, and it's a good moment to look ahead. So today, the topic is launching the status report on modern cooking energy services, which will, of course, and I think Rohit also mentioned that, it will repeat the message that the situation is worrying, the topic needs more priority. It's good to repeat those messages and to keep looking at the new insights there. But also the report will put a spotlight on the bright spots. There are definitely bright spots where transitions are happening and innovations are coming up, and we actually see things happening. A third thing is this clean cooking issue is not a simple problem. It's not one for which there's a simple, easy fix. It's a very complex challenge, which can only be resolved through a long transition. And the report really helps in thinking about the pathways of this transition. What steps do we need to take to really get that ultimate point on the horizon? Let me also stress that our partnership is really important. We need to address currently the short-term crisis and opportunities with a long-term view, with an open mind, patient mind, and intensive cooperation. We need to make clean cooking a key element in our economic recovery from the current COVID crisis. And my hope is that this partnership and this open mindset can really be strengthened by the meeting today, and by the fact that the organizations around the table are working so well together to launch these type of important reports. Before we start the contributions, it's my honor to have also a few housekeeping messages. We'll start with a video message by the Managing Director of the World Bank. I think it's very important to hear us speak on this topic, followed by opening remarks by the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Loughborough University, and a presentation by Yabay and Ed of the contents of the report. We will then hear reactions from our distinguished panelists, and hopefully have some time left to address questions that may come up from your side. If you have any questions, remarks, observations, please put them in the chat box in the WebEx, and we'll try to draw from that. Also, the panelists will then be able to see, even before their intervention, what is the discussion or your perspective, and they can already respond to that. Finally, the CEO of the Clean Cooking Alliance, Dimfna, will make some closing remarks. So now please make sure your microphones are all muted. And Ludo, if you could please launch the video message.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. We are here today to talk about an important topic that relates to everyone's daily activity, but is often neglected. Access to modern cooking is not only about energy, but also about health, gender, environment, and climate. According to the latest SDG 7 tracking report, 2.8 billion people still cook with traditional polluting fuels and technologies. The World Bank new report on the state of access to modern energy cooking services estimates that not progressing beyond this status quo is costing the world more than $2.4 trillion each year. Women bear a disproportionate share of this cost in the form of poor health and safety, as well as lost productivity. Emerging evidence suggests that poor air quality makes transmission of the coronavirus more likely and COVID-19 cases more acute. Accelerating progress towards universal access to modern energy cooking solutions requires thinking on how we approach and measure users' priorities. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. We need to have a more complete understanding of the local context of cooking. To address this issue, the World Bank's ESMAP team, in collaboration with Loughborough University, the Clean Cooking Alliance, and other development partners, has developed and applied a broadened contextual definition for measuring progress called Modern Energy Cooking Services, or MECS. It asks whether cooking solutions are clean, as well as convenient, safe, affordable, and reliable. Using the MECS definition and a detailed data set from 71 countries, the report finds that 4 billion people lack the ability to cook cleanly, conveniently, safely, affordably, and reliably. This in-depth, user-centered data, combined with technology innovations, can be used to inform national-level decision-making on transition pathways to universal MECS access. The report finds that the best way to address the challenge is using a low-cost and best-fit approach that reflects stove users' needs and local market conditions. There is no silver bullet for moving all undeserved populations for MECS access. The process should capitalize on energy system investments, incentives for clean energy consumption, and trade and energy investment policies that best leverage national comparative advantages. In the case of Indonesia, my home country, the government implemented a broadly successful kerosene to LPG conversion program between 2007 to 2012. Through investment in LPG-specific infrastructure, awareness campaigns, and subsidies targeted on poorer consumers, the program helped 50 million households gain access to LPG for cooking in just 5 years. So, with a better understanding of household cooking energy needs, we are bending the curve for the following reasons. First and foremost, there is growing consensus on the importance of modern energy cooking and increasing policy prioritization at global and country levels. Secondly, there are new technologies, business models, and financing mechanisms that enables affordable solutions. The £40 million UK-funded MECS program is a good example of research and innovation funding to the sector. Finally, the Clean Cooking Fund that we launched last year, with a target of $500 million over 5 years, has already attracted support from donors, the private sector, and countries. As 2030 quickly approaches, cooking must be prioritized as a critical, cross-sectoral issue and an integral component of modern energy services. COVID-19 underscores the linkage between cooking, gender, health, environment, and climate. There is no climate intervention with greater co-benefits than providing access to modern cooking. Together, let's join forces to accelerate access to modern cooking and ensure a greener and healthier recovery. Thank you.
So thank you for the video contribution. I think it's very important to hear these messages out of the managing director of the World Bank, which really underlines the extent to which this topic is rising on the agenda and is being taken increasingly serious. Steve Rothberg, Pro Vice Chancellor of Loughborough University, can I ask you to make a few opening remarks?
Yes, thank you, Frank. My name is Steve Rothberg. I'm the Pro Vice Chancellor for Research at Loughborough University in the UK, which is the academic home of Professor Ed Brown. I'm delighted to be here with you today for the launch of this important report, and I'm grateful for an opportunity to say these few words. As I'd like to explain, for Loughborough to be leading the MECS programme alongside the World Bank, this embodies so much of what we hold dear in our approach to research that is both excellent and impactful. Energy is one of just 4 research areas under our Global Challenges programme, And the Energy Global Challenge has diverse priorities across generation, storage and demand, which includes the excellent work of Professor Brown and his team on low carbon energy development in the Global South. It really has been my privilege to see the work, some of which will be talked about today, grow, particularly over the last decade, with increasing levels of UK government and research council funding, supplemented by some of our own internal seed corn funding, building to this really very substantial partnership that we're now enjoying with our Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Over the course of this period, I learned from Ed, and Mari said it too, that 4 billion people worldwide, more than half the world's population, remain without access to modern energy cooking services. It's a situation that I continue to find both astonishing and utterly intolerable. And as I sit here on my comfortable chair, I can't help but be reminded of how much so many of us can so easily take for granted. Our global challenges at Loughborough assert that solutions to the biggest societal challenges require contributions from across the disciplines. And this is a distinctive feature of our approach at Loughborough generally, and indeed of this project specifically. In an area that's traditionally dominated by engineers, it's the human geographer's understanding of the importance of culture and the addition of innovative business models that turn a promising technology solution into a sustainable societal benefit. Last but not least, we recognise the value of partnerships in our work at Loughborough, both academic for the delivery of excellent research and non-academic to ensure that excellent research delivers genuine impact. We're excited by the Challenge Fund components of the programme, and we're excited to be working with partners such as the World Bank and its Energy Sector Management Assistance Programme and the Clean Cooking Alliance. Just as parents are not supposed to have favourite children, Pro Vice Chancellors for Research are not supposed to have favourite research projects. But I confess to you all in this WebEx that this may just be one of my favourite projects. So on that confessional note, I'll hand back to Frank, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the thoughts of today's expert speakers.
Thanks. We can have more of those confessions, I think. Thank you. So yeah, I think we heard a few teasers about the report. So it's high time to give the floor to Yabei and Ed to introduce a bit about the content of the report. Yabei, please.
Thank you very much, Frank. Let me launch my presentation. Okay. You here? Can you see it? Okay. Okay. Let me first thank Loughborough University and the Clean Cooking Alliance for this close collaboration, and UK Aid for funding the MECS program, and Dalberg Advisors as our leading consultants, and numerous industry experts, manufacturers, distributors, policymakers, and NGOs who have provided inputs to the report through surveys, consultations, and technical reviews. I would also like to mention that this report is dedicated to the late Professor Smith, who was a pioneer in this field. His vision and commitment have inspired all of us. Okay, where we are now on SDG 7 on cooking energy. So today, 2.8 billion, as many of you mentioned, 2.8 billion people still cook with traditional polluting fuels and technologies, which is costing the world 2.4 trillion each year. The cost of inaction is driven by adverse impacts on health, 1.4 trillion, climate, 0.2 trillion, and gender, 0.8 trillion from women lost productivity. A continued lack of progress will not only jeopardize the achievement of SDG 7, but also inhibits progress toward related SDGs. Meeting SDGs' ambitious goal means rethinking household energy needs for cooking. Solutions must prioritize user preferences and the local cooking context to address long-standing barriers to the adoption of modern cooking. Building on the World Bank's multi-tier framework, MTF, we are able to use a holistic criteria to measure household access to cooking solutions across 6 technical and contextual attributes: exposure, efficiency, convenience, affordability, safety, and availability, ranging from Tier 0, no access, to Tier 5, full access. Stoves and fuel stacking, which are common practice for household cooking, are also incorporated. So what is modern energy cooking services? A household is considered to have access to MECS when their cooking practice meet the MTF Tier 4 or above. A household whose cooking practice meet MTF Tier 2 or 3 is considered as being in transition with access to improved cooking services. By applying this definition and analyzing 71 country survey data, the report finds that 4 billion people lack access to MECS. And of this, 1.25 billion are considered in transition, while the other 2.75 billion face significantly higher access barriers. A geographic breakdown shows sub-Saharan Africa lacking behind all other regions, with only 10% of the population able to access MECS. Access in Latin America and the Caribbean and East Asia stands at 56% and 36% respectively. The report finds that progress toward universal access to MECS has been hindered by a lack of interventions and solutions that are fully responsive to the underlying needs of lower income and rural households. Slow progress also reflects the fact that the cooking ecosystem for both supply and demand generation is complex and fragmented. Lack of an enabling environment, along with the absence of campaigns and intergovernmental coordination, has also hindered progress. On the other hand, there are encouraging trends. First, there's growing policy prioritization at the global and country levels. For example, launch of Health and Energy Platform Action, HEPA, and national strategies with targets in various countries. Second, there are new and emerging technologies, business models, and continued innovation that enable accessible and affordable solutions, including the leverage of success in upgrade electrification, use high-efficiency electric cooking appliances, and integration with IoT and pay-as-you-go technologies. Third, there is a better understanding of household cooking energy needs and sector dynamics, thanks to new data and research. And fourth, there's more financial resources are moving in the direction of access to MECS. As mentioned at the beginning by Rohit, this month marked the first year anniversary of Clean Cooking Fund. And we also had the first Clean Cooking Fund operation approved last week by the World Bank Board. The project is in Rwanda, the largest clean cooking operation in Africa. There are also other funds and facilities being set up in recent years, such as our RVO SDG 7 RBF facility, CDEF's facility, and MECS Challenge Fund. Finally, we see COVID-19 pandemic provides both challenges and opportunities. It underlines the interlinkage of cooking, health, gender, environment, and climate. It already starts to change people's cooking behavior. For example, many people are switching to electric cooking in Nepal, and in Kenya, Esno cooking company has doubled its sales during the pandemic. However, poor households and small businesses who have the least alternatives are most affected. The public sector is leading the recovery efforts and can change challenges into opportunities by building better. We are a decade away from 2030. To achieve universal access to MECS, it means to lift all households currently at tiers 0 to 3 to at least tier 4. The report estimates the total investment needs are $150 billion annually over the next 10 years. Of this cost, approximately 26% or $39 billion will be shouldered by public sector to ensure that affordability criteria are met. 7% or $11 billion by the private sector to cover the installation of downstream infrastructure, such as LPG storage, filling stations, cylinder manufacturing facilities, and the remaining 67% or $103 billion by household expenditure on stoves and fuels. Higher income countries or regions will be better positioned than lower income countries and regions to accelerate the time required to transition. A universal transition to MECS should follow a least cost best fit approach that reflects local users' needs and local market conditions. This means using granular household cooking data as an input for broader national level energy decision making, a process that capitalizes upon energy system investments, incentive for clean cooking consumption, and the trade and energy investment policies that best leverage national comparative advantages. For example, when we designed the Clean Cooking Fund operation in Rwanda, using the detailed MTF cooking data and the MECS framework, we find affordability is a key barrier for rural households to access modern cooking. So we designed the RBF in such a way that the amount of RBF incentives is linked to the income categories. So the poorer households can receive higher cash incentives to fill their affordability gap. The report also developed a more pragmatic, though less ambitious scenario, considers universal access to improved cooking solutions by 2030. This means to limit tiers 0 and 1, the most polluting and unhealthy cooking practices. The estimated total investment needs are $10 billion per year. The public sector would invest $6 billion and households contributed other $4 billion. From the map, you can see that the majority public funding would support rural households in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. The driving progress on universal access to MECS requires improving the overall cooking ecosystem that mobilize financial and analytical resources, innovative technologies, and partnerships. Putting the end users at the center of the ecosystem, the report recommends the sector, particularly the government development partners, donors, and coordinating platforms as the market shapers, take the 3 priority actions. First, create high-profile coalitions of political leaders to prioritize MECS access in global and national arenas. Second, formalize cooking energy amount in national energy planning and strategies. Third, dramatically scale up public and private financing for MECS. The investment needs for achieving universal access to MECS are $150 billion per year, far higher than the current tens of millions investment per year, which are tracked by SE for All. The investment needs may appear large. The cost in action is much greater, $2.4 trillion per year, which is 16 times of the cost. If we only look at the public funding needs, $39 billion per year, the benefit cost ratio is even higher at 62. So we hope this cost effectiveness is convincing for scarce resource allocation, because it is investment not only in modern energy cooking, but also in environment and climate and in people, especially in women and girls. Thank you. Frank, back to you.
Thank you, Yabei. I'm sure a lot of information to digest. In the chat, Alicia has also written down the hyperlink to the report, so you can also access the full report from that side. But first, let's hear the commentary from the side of Professor Ed Brown. Ed.
Thanks very much, Frank, and Yabe as well. I didn't envy Yabe's side of the task in to try and offer an overview of such a crisply detailed and a wide-ranging report in such a small amount of time is no small task. So thank you, Yabe, for putting that across so clearly. What I want to do is just to kind of reflect a little bit on some of the wider, some senses wider, some senses more specific issues. First thing is, I think, having an opportunity to reflect around these issues at the moment. I noticed that we actually, at the moment in time, we have 206 participants on this call. So I think actually we were talking about the advantages and disadvantages of COVID, but I think it's quite revealing that we have an opportunity to have that number of people in the room listening to this. That might be the case if we were launching this physically in one particular location. Second thing is that really just to echo what I think everyone who's spoken so far has said, which is one of the most encouraging things about the current circumstances is the level of partnership which is emerging between those that see the importance of tackling this issue. And this report is a result of that, I think, bringing together the research community, the World Bank, the Clean Cooking Alliance, and a whole range of other partners behind the scenes who've been consulted by Dalberg and our colleagues in producing the report, I think is evidence of the recognition that unless we come together like this, and unless we learn the lessons from this kind of report, we are not going to get anywhere near the SDG 7 target for clean cooking. So the report, as Yabe has shown, I think is innovative in a number of ways. Firstly, it is innovative in the way that it suggests that we should be measuring the need that is out there. So in some ways, it's quite ironic in one way that this is a report showing progress, and yet the first thing we've done is redefine the problem in some senses, so that we're now saying, oh no, it's not the 2.8 billion that we need to tackle that we've been saying for the last 3 or 4 years, it's actually 4 billion. So the first thing the report has done is actually increase the scale of the problem in some senses. But I think because of that, it actually enables us to understand a greater range of factors as to why people lack access to clean cooking. And that, I think, is what this report is really enabling us to do. But the key question then, on the basis of the evidence that we presented through this report, is what do we do about it? How do we actually embrace this transition to adopt a different strategy to actually effectively tackling the whole question of clean cooking? And the MECS program as a whole, the Modern Energy Cooking Services program, that is reflected in the kind of transition target of this report, is doing a whole range of different things to try and further that agenda. And it really focuses around this question of innovation. So it's one, what we've just been talking about, innovation in our sense of understanding of the problem. It's technology innovation. It's around new approaches to LPG. It's around new approaches to delivering really efficient electric cooking appliances. It's innovation in handling data and understanding the links between data we have on cooking and on electrification. It's innovation in business models, in understanding what are the needs of the companies that are serving these markets. And it's innovation in terms of finance and access to finance. And we could talk a lot about all of those different areas, but focus on what I think are perhaps two of the most exciting and important areas. The first of these, and no one who knows me will be surprised by this, is electric cooking. And I think what comes across through the report, this is the first time that any big study of the challenges of clean cooking has devoted significant attention to the opportunities for electric cooking. Up until 2 years ago, most people that we spoke to were still saying, nah, electric cooking, forget about it. It's far too costly. It would cause too much disruption to the generation systems and so on. Forget about it. What we've seen over the last 2 years is a recognition that there are tremendous opportunities that can be grasped for electric cooking. We already have high-scale discussions and negotiations going on with countries around significant adoption of electric cooking, Nepal being the first and obvious example of that, but by no means limited to that. We've recently announced a major program of Challenge Fund support for exploring trials of electric pressure cookers on a range of different systems, mini grids, solar home systems, and so on. 14 projects funded in 8 countries that will be reporting over the course of the next year. We also have a series of innovative ways of approaching the financial sector in relation to this. So this is, for example, recognizing, as Yabe was saying, that the demand for resources that we need to meet this challenge is being absolutely dwarfed in terms, the supply is absolutely dwarfed in terms of what the demand is. When we look, though, at the opportunities with electric cooking, to see electric cooking as a load on a mini grid, as a load on an electrification program at the national grid level, then suddenly there is a great interest in the opportunities for accessing that electrification finance for clean cooking purposes. And very soon we will be doing another report with ESMAP that will be out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, which looks at that set of issues in particular. And finally, there is a real opportunity of reassessing the role of climate finance in this area, to develop methodologies drawing upon what the real carbon savings that would come from 100% renewable electricity through the off-grid sector, and indeed through those countries where the on-grid sector has a high level of renewables, give you a tremendous opportunity. The second area is a report that we've also just published in the last couple of days, which is the first major study of the potential of bio-LPG. So that's, in other words, is the recognition of many of the, questions from across the community about the environmental credentials of LPG. I think many people recognise the contribution of LPG to meeting the clean cooking targets, but there are some concerns around the fact that this is a fossil fuel. There are tremendous opportunities out there in terms of the possibilities for the generation of bio-LPG from municipal waste, from agricultural residues, and so on. I do recommend everyone to also have a look at that report. So we're living in, I think, in really exciting times. There are massively challenging times, but there are a whole set of new opportunities for responding to the clean cooking challenge that mean we can have a whole set of new ways of tackling the issue that learn from the limitations of why we are still in this situation now. As Steve started off by saying, it is untenable that we are still in the situation where half of the world's population do not have access to really clean cooking fuels. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Yabe. I think this is an excellent deep dive into what could we really do, what is the problem we're facing, where do we see opportunities. I realize that scenarios are not predictions, so this is just thinking what would happen if we would pursue that direction. But always, I sort of feel a bit humbled when we talk about these huge figures like 10 to 150 billion dollars a year. It's very difficult to imagine. But at the same time, we also see this type of analysis that say, to get out of the economic crisis currently, governments are thinking about spending more than $10 trillion and deciding on the direction of those $10 trillion in the next couple of years. So it is not completely out of place, and it's very timely to think about how can we, and I mean all stakeholders around this call, respond to the challenges ahead, and also, while being modest, think big and think about the directions we have ahead of us. That brings me to the panel discussion. We have a very rich panel, which we'll go through in a minute. we've asked every speaker to take about 5 minutes to give a reflection on the report which has just been presented, what is new, what is remarkable about the report, and any other comments you'd like to share. The questions, and I see some questions coming in on the chat. Please keep that going. I hope we have some time towards the end to answer the questions, but I also invite all of the panelists to have a brief look at the questions as they come in, because you may be able to already say something about that. Our first contribution, and I think it's an immediate question, is when you develop a report like this out of World Bank knowledge institutes, the way you would like to use the report, obviously, is to make sure it works in the policy dialogue with partner countries. So one of the leading countries in moving ahead the clean cooking agenda is Kenya. We were expecting the cabinet secretary of the Ministry of Energy. We understood that he's been called into a meeting with the minister, but very happy that Paul Mbuti would step in, our good friend Paul, who'll be able, he's deputy director in the Renewable Energy Department, and he'll be able to explain what Kenya is doing in this space. Paul, are you online and can you come in?
Yes, good morning, good afternoon. I'm around, yes. And I also thank the World Bank for this wonderful report. It shed some great insights into this subject of clean cooking. One of the key things that I pick from the report is that the figures that we've been talking about, 2.8 billion, is trying to tell us using the MECS definition, these figures have been revised upwards, and that of course gives us something to chew so that we think about what to do with regard to accelerating the process of transition to clean cooking. Now, within the report also, I note that the report has ably brought out some important challenges that countries need really to address. And some of these are the fact that the interventions that have previously been put forward to support access to clean cooking have not been strong enough. They have not matched what is being done for electrification. And so that means a lot of policy priority is still required. And speaking about that within the Kenyan context, Kenya is still reliant in a big way on the biomass fuels, which are accounting for close to 70% of the total primary energy consumption, and therefore access to clean cooking is still at very low levels. That means if we are talking about below 30% compared to electrification, which is at 77% or around, that means if we really need to look at the targets for SDG 7, then we must find very great efforts that are required to rapidly scale up interventions to enable for scaling up of this adoption and deployment of clean cooking solutions. And so the Ministry of Energy in Kenya is seriously thinking about what specific interventions. We have recently launched an energy efficiency and conservation strategy, and this strategy provides a roadmap on some of the interventions that will be required. Kenya has also made a commitment to attain universal access to clean cooking solutions by 2028, and that means if we must attain that, we really must redouble our efforts. We must also get more financing for this clean cooking space. And this is something which we think it is doable, because if we get all the stakeholders to partner, I believe it is something that can be brought home. Now, in terms of the policy environment that is being provided by the country, we have an Energy Act of 2019, which provides the regulatory framework. And then we have developed two other strategies: a bioenergy strategy of 2020, which is yet to be published, but it is work that has been completed. It actually is the one that provides a roadmap of what Kenya is intending to do to scale up the access to clean cooking. Now, just briefly to reflect on some of the challenges that we as a country are going through. One is, of course, the upfront costs of ensuring these clean cooking solutions are made available is still a challenge to most of the investors and to most of the other players. There's also low awareness within the households, and therefore the need for them to adopt clean cooking solutions. And this is something that needs really to be done. I mean, we need to do quite a lot on that. Of course, in terms of the fuels, there is low availability of clean cooking fuels, because right now we are speaking about the LPG, which is still, the infrastructure is not still right for the rural households. We are also saying, because of that underdeveloped infrastructure, even if we chose to go LPG, we are not likely to make a lot of progress, even though substantially there has been some work. Now we have other emerging fuels like the ethanol and electric cooking. These are initiatives that the country is gaining some mileage in terms of experiences, and we believe we can be able to scale up this with the support of different partners. And finally, as I conclude, Kenya, as I earlier indicated, aspires to achieve universal access to clean cooking solutions by 2028. And therefore, we think doing this requires concerted efforts and participation of the various stakeholders. It requires the consumers to be able to prioritize cooking as an area that they can invest in. Of course, the basic analysis indicates that households, even those who can afford, are still not yet going to the clean cooking solutions for other reasons, cultural reasons, in terms of food, the taste of food, and other different considerations, which we think these are trade-offs which need to be amplified as we go forward. And so as we also do this, we believe the global community needs to be more cohesive. We need to talk louder on this agenda of clean cooking. The very final point I make is an aspiration which Kenya is spearheading, and that is Kenya has volunteered to spearhead the proposal to establish an International Clean Cooking Day. And this is one of the things we think, if countries can agree to that, then every year we'll have something that can give us moments to reflect on what we are doing in terms of advancing the case for clean cooking. This proposal is going to be presented in the next UN Environment Assembly, which will be here in Nairobi, and we are reaching out to partners. We already have our Foreign Affairs Ministry working on this, and we'll be speaking to many of you so that we can support this initiative, so that we get the recognition that is required at the global level. May I pause it there, Frank, and thank you to speak to you and to speak to everybody else today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and also thank you to Kenya to take this initiative for this International Clean Cooking Day. And we'll gladly see this coming on our side, and I'm sure there'll be more countries around the table that will be very happy to look at this. Can I take my liberty as a moderator to ask you one additional question now, Paul? And that is, with this COVID crisis and the lockdown, do you have any insights that you could share how that has worked out in especially rural Kenya in terms of cooking?
Thank you very much. Yes, we established a task force to analyze the impact of COVID on the entire energy sector. I was party to the team that was working on this. We, of course, have been impacted adversely in terms of the consumers' supply chains being disrupted, where the suppliers of improved stoves and those other cooking solutions were not able to get these to the markets and to the places where the demand was. And because of that, there's been, of course, the business vitality has sort of come down, and we think and we assess that probably this may make households to slip back to the traditional forms of cooking, and which is really trying to slow down the momentum which had previously been there before COVID. We have made proposals to the government through that initiative, and so far, because there are two recovery packages that have been developed nationally, energy sector was not included in the first round of the stimulus package, but we believe in the next round, which is under discussion, the proposals that we made about what needs to be done to support energy entrepreneurs whose businesses have been adversely impacted. These are the proposals that we think are going to help build back from this pandemic. And so clean cooking hasn't been spared. And so we are looking forward, of course, to engage with partners. We appreciate that so far we've gotten a lot of support from some of our bilateral partners as we go through the pandemic. Of course, the impact of pandemic is like now we are more or less seeing some sign of flattening of the curve, and we think maybe in the next 1 or 2 months this problem could be subsiding. But the big thing is, how do we recover from the impacts that have been created by the pandemic? So this is part of the ongoing activities, Frank, that we are experiencing and working to see we can be able to bounce back by ensuring those that need to be targeted, the most vulnerable, they need to be supported so that they can regain back to their momentum, and then together we still can focus on what we had planned within our aspirations of achieving clean cooking access by 2028. Let me hold it there.
Yeah, thanks very much, Paul. And I think it was really great that you could provide that addition. I think it's very insightful, and I completely agree with you with the importance here. I think it's interesting to see that clean cooking or improved cooking for a long time has been seen and approached as a topic that was primarily an energy topic or a forestry topic. Currently, first and foremost, it's to do with health. So I'm very happy to have Maria Nera also in the panel, and I'd like to ask your reflections on the report and the discussion thus far, Maria.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you as well, Alex, for this report. Obviously, for us, this new report provides even more evidence to the fact that we have a terrible energy poverty and how this is impacting our health. You know, as a public health officer that is very much involved on issues related to environmental risk, air pollution, for instance, is affecting our health. I'm always very, very surprised when I tell people that every year we have 7 million premature deaths caused by air pollution, and there are still many people around who get very surprised. I thought that this figure was very well known and very well everywhere, but in fact it's not. So we need to keep repeating it, and more than half of those 7 million deaths are coming from indoor air pollution, from the lack of having clean fuels, clean sources of energy at the household level, and they are contributing as well to the outdoor air pollution. So for us, this is fundamental to advance on this agenda as quick as possible and as ambitious as possible. If in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, where we know that if you are living in a city where you are permanently exposed to high levels of air pollution, you are more vulnerable to any infectious agent like this virus, the COVID-19 virus. So your vulnerability is increased. It's not by coincidence that you have very polluted cities where they have been heated more by the COVID-19 because the lungs of the people were more vulnerable. And again, part of this pollution is coming from the indoor air pollution and the lack of access to modern energy at the household level for cooking. So how can we, when I heard what I heard from the delegate of Kenya, saying that on the recovery packages, on the investments the countries are doing now, they are not considering access to clean energy, I think is quite paradoxical, because in fact, if we are learning something, is that crises like COVID-19, from a public health point of view, tell us that you cannot just deal with the virus. You need to understand what are the sources of this virus. You need to go upstream in public health to understand what are the causes. And one of the causes is obviously the fact that we are destroying the environment and we are not moving into a good, healthy energy transition, moving societies to access to clean energy. So that's why WHO, we worked on this manifesto for a healthy and green recovery. And one of our 6 prescriptions is exactly about that. Moving quickly to a healthy energy transition, stop using fossil fuels. And this is for a public health reason. This is because we need to tackle the causes of all of these crises that are making us from a health perspective, very, very vulnerable. So I would like to add that the health argument, what I think is a very powerful health argument to this argument, making sure that when those big stimulus packages that the countries will be now putting in place, they take the right decisions. If they go again to the wrong decisions, still paying subsidies to fossil fuels, still not putting money into ensuring this quick transition to clean modern energy at the household level for cooking, we will be really in trouble from a public health point of view. So thanks for this report. I think it provides more insights on demonstrating once again how this is linked to people's health. We will use it in that sense, and we will use it as well for our partnership on health alliance on energy and health. Sorry, the big alliance that we are promoting on energy and health. We have already more than 50 countries and big champions, and this is the place where we want the dialogue between energy and health and gender, and all the benefits can be explored and hopefully, and clear for everyone, for them to know those terrible figures, and then taking the action is needed. But if action was needed before, now, believe me, with the current crisis, it makes even much more sense to do it, and there is even more urgency to accelerate this access to clean modern energy for cooking or for heating, or at the household level. So definitely, as Archimedes, I don't know if all of you remember this Archimedes principle. He was saying, give me a lever and I can move the wall and the earth. And here we have it, the lever. We have so many co-benefits. And after the COVID-19, the society is not prepared for yet bad news again about more crisis, more difficulties and everything. At the contrary, we need to give them positive arguments to take the right decisions. And here we have plenty of positive arguments. If we move into accelerating this increased access to modern energy at the household level, the health benefits will be enormous. We will have opportunities for gender improvement, socioeconomic benefits, and even green jobs and other possibilities to recover this terrible economic recession that we are all going to. So all positive. Thank you, Frank. Over to you.
Thanks, Maria. And yeah, I think it's incredibly important to have you on board and to make sure that we start building the bridges between the energy sector and the health sector on this topic. Also, there I don't feel that we will solve that immediately, or it's a quick fix. It'll need serious work. But to hear your commitment and resolve to that, I think it's very important. Maybe I should now turn the spotlight a bit towards the development partners to see, so how do you approach this type of topics with these insights and hearing countries and partners and international institutions? And for that, David will now, I'd like to ask you, Deputy Director Research at, and then I automatically would say DFID, but now I'm saying UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. It's still not fluid, but it'll improve over time. David, can you come in with your comments?
By all means, and I'm glad you introduced it, because every now and then I still use the wrong name, so thank you. I think almost from our side, just reading through this, listening to the comments today, I think we've got there's probably 4 points I want to bring out. There's one which is just kind of recognizing that there's a big number that just got bigger. And I think actually in our business across the board, we're used to dealing with numbers that are big. So 2.8 billion is huge, 4 billion is even bigger. I mean, the 3 billion is the same number of the people that haven't got access to water to tackle COVID. So these are sort of big challenges, and to a certain extent, it's interesting, but it doesn't change the world. So I think what I really liked about this report is it then goes on to say, so how do we start to dent that really big number? So that's the second point I want to bring about, which is this kind of, I didn't know quite how to phrase it, but it's a sense of sort of taking the blinkers off. And I think there's a lot of comments in here around the integration side. So almost the lack of integration of an integrated kind of energy planning approach sort of really splits the two. So you've still got sort of electrification programs going out, then you've got cooking policies and interventions separately. And I think there's a real opportunity to sort of combine those two. And I think that's what sort of sparked us to really get behind sort of supporting MECS, supporting this study, to try and get the real data behind the story that what does a genuine integrated energy planning approach that combines these two really look like. So that's the second. So the third one is a comment around sparking a revolution is very location specific. I think it was really interesting looking at the graphs that Yabe talked us through around what's happening in Asia and what's been able to work really well there, what hasn't yet kicked off really effectively in cooking in sub-Saharan Africa. And that whole dynamic around what's happening in urban centres, what's happening around the costs of charcoal, and the other drivers that you could really begin to see sort of pockets of this that could actually work, not in 5 or 10 years' time, but actually could work now. So I think it's that challenge that we've kind of been left with from this report and the other ones that Ed's talked about and referred to, of finding, let's get a few of these that look like they're kind of ready to tip, and spark a few revolutions in those and see who we can inspire to follow those examples and those demonstrations. And then the final one I'd bring to is a kind of challenge, I guess, for us individually is across the board. Actually, what are we then going to bring to this? So it does flag some really interesting ideas around what governments could do, what World Bank and IFIs can do, what the private sector can do. And I'd just like to echo Ed's comments around just the sort of innovation around each one of those elements, including innovative finance. There's all sorts of pull mechanisms that I know Frank and others have been sort of quite experts at. What can we throw from our whole toolbox at this so that we can genuinely kind of work with the government decision makers to look at holistic kind of policies that can bring in the sort of the integrated approach. And I think just if you want a kind of bit of a challenge, as I know the World Bank's hosting this, actually when I read this report at its core, it still treats cooking as its own sector. And I think I would love to see people on board who are, I don't know, the huge sort of IDA lending teams really discussing how grids can sort of be strengthened to include cooking loads, and how we can sort of unlock the huge climate finance into there, and how you can be really imaginative and innovative across all of those different sectors, and not just looking at private sector to be really innovative. And I think that's why we kind of pushed quite a lot of money through the MECS route, and have got a whole load of people who have been thinking about this for a while and deeply frustrated that actually a lot of it isn't taking off. And now they're all not sounding as frustrated. And it feels that the right people are around the table. I didn't realize quite how many are here, but actually the bunch of us that are listening into this, we could make quite a difference in this space over the next 2 or 3 years and spark a few revolutions. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think it's a very positive perspective, which I completely share. I have the idea that we're at the point where we can do much more, and we could really accelerate this work. So thanks for that, and thanks also for the analysis that you share. Sam Parker, CEO of the Shell Foundation, can I also ask your perspective on this topic?
Sure. Thanks very much. There you go. Thanks very much, Frank. First of all, congratulations to the World Bank and ESMAP and MECS team. Fantastic report. We at the Shell Foundation have been working 15 years on clean cooking, and we'll continue. We're committed to working on it. And I guess I'd just like to share a couple of things. The first would be a few points that I saw as really resonating with what we see in the market coming out of the report. And then a few ideas or comments about what I'd like to see perhaps more of to try and help tackle this problem. Really liked, I mean, Ed, this might have come from your team, but I really liked the new measurement methodology. That extra sort of detailed granularity is really, really helpful. Really like the fact that you're presenting this as a public-private, and by necessity, a public-private collaboration needed to get there. The sooner we recognize that, I think the better. Private sector can definitely take some of the load, but it wouldn't be able to take the whole load to get to 2030. The opportunity we're seeing around detailed, localized consumer data is so important. We're actually seeing some very promising initiatives for finding out almost down to the household level, at least to the village level, what the preferences are, what the consumers really want and really are willing to pay for. That drives everything. And I think with technology now, we're seeing some optimism, I think, on how you can segment in demand maps in a much more granular way. And that's a hugely exciting area. You've clearly identified the range of new fuel types, which all we agree on, all of which look promising. Clearly, the PAYGO LPG seems to be potentially in the front in terms of opportunity to scale up fast, because you've got players already in the market, you've got distribution mechanisms. Certainly for some parts of the market, it's turning into a pull product, not a push product. For those of us that have been pushing clean cooking for 15 years, to see long lines of customers or potential customers lining up to buy a PAYGO LPG product is it's a complete turnaround in the way the world is because up to date it's all been persuasion and cook stove stacking and the rest of it. So that is really exciting, and to keep focused on what the consumer wants. And we're also seeing an uptick in the demand for carbon impact. So we're seeing in some of the clean cooking companies actually forward contracts against carbon off-takers, and that's actually, with the price beginning to tick upwards, has got to be a good trend, and we're excited to see that. I was interested that you didn't mention in your improved cooking scenario that you didn't mention any private sector contribution, which I wonder whether that was a deliberate one. I'd like to hear at some stage why that was. And a couple of comments on sort of what I'd like to see more of. It feels to me like the clean cooking sector is not a sector, it's a multitude of sectors. It seems to be 10 different sectors, all of which have somewhat different characteristics, different supply chains, different products and services, and actually really helpful to build on what you started, which is more around segmentation. Couldn't we more segment around finance products, around how we build partnerships and coalitions, how we support R&D policy around the subsectors of clean cooking, which do seem to me to be different markets, and we need to can be addressed. And actually, when you've got a massive problem like we've got, sometimes it's helpful to break it down into its constituent parts. And to the previous speaker about innovative finance, we're funding a new product on pre-financing clean cooking solutions against health outcomes, and we've just lined up the first 3 or 4 health impact buyers. And that, of course, is a new market, if you like, a new set of impact buyers, which I think is an interesting financial innovation. I'd love to see more understanding of how we can support government to embed clean cooking in electrification plans. And totally and agree with previous speakers about the importance of making this one of the aspects of electrification or parts of integrated electrification and power plans. But how to do it, there's very little guidance and evidence of actually how you go about doing that. So more support to governments to enable them, and we know that governments need to be in the lead of all of this, and all we're doing is providing support. And finally, just to say a kind of word of caution, really, if we do sub-segment this market and we start looking at peri-urban markets, electric cooking, please let's not forget that rural consumers might well be deprioritized if we're not careful, because many of these new grid-based, perhaps even PEGO LPG solutions will be more likely to be successful commercially around towns and cities. And we need to continue to focus on those really who is impacted most by the issue, which is poorer remote rural communities. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And yeah, I think it's good to appreciate the long-term pioneering work that Shell Foundation has been doing in this field. And I'm also very happy to hear the challenges that you give us. I think it's very valuable to capture those and to think back once in a while. Are we on the right track? Are we doing the right things? One thing that I've heard come up several times is how do we really integrate clean cooking in electrification planning and energy planning, and I'm very happy that we do have an expert on that, Hara Raj, Deputy Managing Director of the Nepal Electricity Authority. And I'd like to hear your perspective, and also to what extent you feel that you can actually take clean cooking fully into account when making electricity plans, energy plans, etc.
Thank you very much. I represent electricity utility in Nepal, that is Nepal Electricity Utility. It's a government-owned entity which is responsible for the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity in the country. Basically, in today's discussion, I will be happy to discuss in very few areas, particularly in the priority, what the utility has prioritized for this electric cooking, and what are the challenges we are facing at this point. So basically, I will be touching in these two aspects. This Nepal Electricity Authority has about 4.8 million consumers and about 86% grid access to the population. We have about 6% of grid access, but the electricity requirement is not met with these grid access. Out of those consumers, about 94% are domestic consumers. So we have government has planned to electrify fully the country by 22-23, and we have to enhance the per capita consumption by 700 units by 22-23. That is where this importance of electric cooking falls in our priority. We have identified, as a utility, we have identified few areas where we can enhance the energy consumptions. And the most important among these areas is the electric cooking. Some of the other areas are the electric vehicles and the use of electricity in the irrigation and drinking water purposes. As you know, the Nepal is the hilly country, and the population who are residing in the hill areas, they have to pump the water from the riverbeds, and they need electricity for that. And the most other important area is the enhanced consumption in the electric industries, that is industrial consumptions. So these are few of the priority areas, and the electric cooking is one of the most important area in that respect. As a utility, we are facing some problems. In fact, before our transmission and distribution networks, so we have to upgrade them. Not only the distribution infrastructures, the substation, distribution substation, transmission lines, we have to upgrade them to supply the required amount of electricity for the consumers. And basically the low voltage substations, they are of 33 kV voltage level, and we have to upgrade them. The conductors have to be upgraded. And as I said, about 14% population is out of access from the central grid. So that electrification part is also very important for the utility. So this upgradation of the system, transmission and distribution, is one aspect where we are facing a big challenge. The second is the reliability of supply. Once we ask our consumers to go for the electric cooking, they will seek for the reliability. And that is one of the area where we are working very hard. The third is the pricing of the electricity, especially for the domestic consumers. In the recent tariff change, we have decreased the tariff for the domestic consumers by about 9%. It will obviously motivate them, but still the tariff structure is discouraging type, especially the domestic tariff. And we are working hard in this respect, how we can enhance the people's aspirations and ask them to go for electric cooking. This is one of the areas where we are working very hard. The other area is we are also discussing with the various government agencies and other development partners also how we can give subsidy to the consumers and motivate them for the electric cooking purposes. Different non-governmental and governmental organizations are working in this respect. In fact, they have just started, I would rather say. And to achieve our per capita consumption growth and the government's goal to consume the 5,000 megawatt electricity by 2022-23 domestically, we have to make a lot of adjustment in our system also, and we have to motivate our consumers also, and we are trying to manage that, and the support from the development partners will be very important in this respect. So this is where we stand right now, and with this I would like to conclude here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's tremendously interesting, and it will be very important also as you go along and you learn more to figure out how best to share your experiences with other countries, and we make sure we capture the lessons from it, because I think it's very important, innovative direction that you're taking. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I now move to one of the global champions on clean cooking, but also somebody who knows really the reality on the ground in Sierra Leone and how harsh the situation really can be. Kande, you're connected, right?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Frank. Let me commend our colleagues, ESMAP, MECS, and Clean Cooking Alliance for putting this important study together. It reminds me of about 11 years ago when we first collectively launched the Clean Cooking Association in its previous configuration with UN Foundation. How people were shocked when we talked about 2.5 million premature deaths due to household air pollution and lack of clean cooking. And then suddenly, with good data supported by and driven by the support of Mrs. Hillary Clinton and the Shell Foundation and others, suddenly the number was now over 4 million. So here again, we see the numbers growing. 2.8 billion now, we're talking about 4 billion, lacking more than energy clean cooking services. So I want to commend the team for bringing the two knowledge platforms together, the multi-tier framework and better definition that Loughborough University has brought into this broader concept of modern energy cooking services. So kudos to you. I am going to talk more about the political mobilization. If we don't do that, Yabe's dream of going from a few millions thrown at the problem to reaching 150 billion a year will not be achieved. So we need that political mobilization globally, but also at country level. So my first recommendation to the team would be, hey, use your convening powers again. I believe that we've been able to build up HEPA, the Health Energy Platform of Action. You have 4 powerful agencies there, UNDP, World Bank, UNDESA, WHO. Take this information in front of the Secretary General. Got to put it in front of him. This is as important for him as COVID. This is a silent tsunami killing so many people, and with the bigger impacts on the environment, and of course, we've been able to document the economic costs. These stack up well against when we talk about some of the climate costs as well. So that is what I would recommend. Second, to Rohit and colleagues, to the spring meetings. Let's bring this information in front of the finance ministers. These are some of the steps we took when we were trying to push for sustainable energy for all, and particularly electrification. We've got to use that convening power to get this evidence in front of these key global leaders, and of course, with the help of Frank and others, to get it in front of the development cooperation ministers, DEFCO, for example. I was on a call yesterday where DEFCO was involved, and they admit that they've not really given as much attention to clean cooking as they should. They were still talking about financial instruments for electrification. I say, yes, we all have to belong to those 10 years ago. What about the financial innovation now for getting investments into clean cooking? So one, these global leaders need to see this evidence that we've all seen. The second point I want to make is a little bit more country level information. For countries like Rwanda, Kenya, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, India, Bangladesh, that are ready to move, how do we get more evidence, data in those countries, and of course others, so that they can make a similar case to their presidents, to their ministers of energy, but also their ministers of health and particularly finance. So I guess the next stage for ED and the group is again some of these country level data that advocates at country level can use to convince the political establishment. 2 other points I want to make is that the scale of the problem is bigger than we thought. All of us are admitting that now, thanks to this analysis that has been presented to us. Which means that the interventions we will have to take to get the scale and speed we want must include subsidies. I have been in several calls now over the last 2-3 months talking about mini grids and others, where there's a huge discussion of the affordability gap. Let's face it, when we were pushing renewables 15-20 years now, we had to do some of these kinds of subsidies. Yes, you can target them well, and this kind of analytics can help you target those subsidies, both demand-side subsidies to help the uptake, especially if we're talking about poor rural communities, and also supply-side support and incentive. We're talking you provide enough energy for electric cooking. I tell you, that's not going to happen without more support. The mini-grid markets in Africa are still young and fragile. They need support. So I would say that with the World Bank and others, when we're talking about something the Shell representative talked about, integrating clean cooking within electrification plans, yes, electrification has enjoyed subsidies for a long time. Given the evidence we see here about the trillions of dollars of negative impacts of lack of clean cooking, I think it makes sense. Some smart subsidies can rebalance some of what we see, but also create the incentives to grow markets. Yesterday in another call, we had a big debate whether demand-side subsidies can seed market development. The evidence is clear. It is what we do on the supply side, the support and incentives that we give to entrepreneurs, especially develop the supply chains for clean fuels and so on. And of course, the managing director from the World Bank, in a quick talk about the success she saw in Indonesia, but that success did not happen without a suite of policies, which included some degree of subsidies to grow those markets, whether in Indonesia or Malaysia or elsewhere. And finally, to say that we have already worked now to create, together all with Maria Nera and others, Energy and HEVOS and others, HEPA. This is an important platform. The evidence we see now means we must move faster to formalize and kick off the high-level coalition of leaders. It is urgent, it is necessary, but it also means that we have to go beyond the bureaucracy. When we were doing sustainable energy for all, I had the freedom, the Secretary General of the UN gave me the freedom to go beyond the bureaucracy, especially because we, private sector, we need Shell, Total, and others on the table to help us build that infrastructure for LPG, or Petronas. Petronas developed markets in Malaysia before the big oil companies and others move in, which means we must be technology agnostic here. The problem is too big for us to begin to pick and choose. And I like what Ed and others said. One size will not fit all. The context matters in each country, so which means we have to be flexible on technologies. But I emphasize again for Maria and others, my colleagues of HEPA who are on this call, that we have to go beyond the bureaucracy. If we just rely on our bureaucratic processes in multilateral systems, we will not have the scale. I saw the Prince of Orange do it with water and sanitation. He taught me how to do it for sustainable energy for all. I remember those early meetings with him. He said, look, go beyond the bureaucracy. So if we're going to engage private sector, NGOs and others, we have to be the bureaucracies to deal with the challenge that Ed and the Dimfna and the Rohit and Yabi have presented this afternoon. We got to do more. We got to do it fast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kande. And I couldn't agree more. We need inspiration and we need to steer this agenda. And I think you're doing a great job as ever to inspire us and to put on the table that we need to keep inspiring our leaders, because we need the leadership in order to deliver a result here. Maybe coming to the final speaker, I would definitely say on one of the most important speakers in our panel, Sheila. I'm always very curious with which angle you'll enlighten us, if you're coming from the gender angle or as a co-chair of the SDG 7 Technical Advisory Group. But I'd really like to hear your perspective on where you feel we are now, how best to use this knowledge that we have and the insight through a report like this one, and what you feel really is the priority for us ahead.
Thank you very much, Frank. So I'm going to come at it using many different hats, including gender and as the co-chair of the SDG 7 Technical Advisory Group, but also as civil society organizations. And in this, HEVOS and Energia joined the other panelists in congratulating the World Bank, Loughborough University and the Clean Cooking Alliance on the report. We very much welcome the shift in the cooking sector narrative that it provides, becoming more user-centered and introducing the term modern energy cooking services with additional attributes in the definition. These attributes reflect the importance of the context of users' cooking experiences and their physical environments, and the market and the energy ecosystems in which they live. If we talk about user-centered though, we know that these cooking energy users are mostly women and girls, and that means that a gender perspective needs to underline all these context attributes. Household purchasing and decision-making, gender roles, differential access to assets and finance, and a myriad of other gender issues also influence these attributes. This gendered information is critical to formalize cooking energy demand in national energy planning, a major recommendation of the report, and of course also for the development of the COVID-19 recovery strategies that you spoke of, Frank, in your introductions. Secondly, underscoring what Dr. Nkela just said, we are encouraged by the recommendation in the report for high-profile coalitions of political leaders to prioritize MECS access in global and national arenas. Hivos and Energia fully support and commit to participate in these efforts. We have, in fact, for more than 20 years pointed out that the neglect of cooking energy in the energy sector is a gender issue, a political issue due to the invisibility of women's work and the lack of women's empowerment and representation. Today, we continue to believe that the political drive and aspirations are key. If clean cooking becomes politically important, then energy investments will follow, as they did with rural electrification, Frank, and with renewable energy in many countries. High-profile coalitions like the High-Level Coalition of Leaders for Clean Cooking, Health and Energy under the HEPA platform can catalyze and lead this process, and we congratulate WHO as a secretariat of HEPA for the 15 members that have already joined the coalition. What is important for us, however, is that this political messaging should reflect the aspirations of women. And here, Frank, I want to join you in saying aspirations and emphasizing the word aspirations. It also has to speak to the global women's movement. It has to address not only clean cooking and health, but also women's rights, gender equality, and women's economic empowerment. And of course, and I'm sure Maria is going to ensure this, all such high-level groups should include adequate representation of women and gender organizations at the table. And indeed, we look forward to the high-level coalition also representing cooking energy at the high-level energy dialogue in 2021 that has been led by UNDESA, UN Energy, and the UN Secretary General's Special Representative Damiela on sustainable energy. We also agree with the report's findings that research and innovation are critical to achieving MECS affordably. This includes research and innovation on gender. On the demand side, Energia's empirical research, supported by then DFID, but now FCDO UK, shows that there is a difference between men and women, whether it's in their ability to access and afford energy, in the benefits they reap from modern energy sources, or indeed in the impacts on their lives, incomes, and employment. This information is critical to achieving the least cost, best fits, scale solutions recommended in the report. On the supply side, empirical research from Energy and the Clean Cooking Alliance has shown that women entrepreneurs have a comparative advantage in selling to the last mile. As this report points out, incentivizing cooking enterprises and overcoming enterprise capacity constraints is key for results-based financing to be effective. And Frank, you and I were at a meeting yesterday where we looked at some of the results-based financing for the upcoming end-of-life biogas program, where we see it's very easy to reach some of the targets on gender transformation only if you just disaggregate some of the results-based financing targets. The report also points that most of the progress in expanding access to clean cooking solutions has been in urban areas, with rural areas falling behind. So research and innovation on scaling up last mile approaches led by women entrepreneurs is critical. It's also for this reason that in partnership with NDEV and the next program of Loughborough University, that Energia has launched the Gender and Energy Innovation Facility that focuses on both cooking energy and electricity. And here we join the speakers in saying we need to see them, we need to look at them as interlinkages and not in silence. Dramatically scaling up public and private financing for MECS is another key recommendation of the report. In Energia, we've been working on different aspects of finance at the country level. Our partner Solar Sister is working with BRACS on consumer financing in Tanzania. In Senegal, Nepal, and Kenya, we have been working with existing networks of commercial banks and microfinance institutions to create structural change and lasting impacts in financing women's energy business. This is a common approach in gender funding. For example, the Africa Development Bank's AFAWA initiative has $30 million risk-sharing instrument to unlock $3 billion in credit for women's businesses and enterprises in Africa. Why shouldn't clean cooking be included in this and other similar instruments that aim to scale up women's financial inclusion and that can complement the financing that others have been talking about from IDA and indeed the Clean Cooking Fund? Conversely, Why shouldn't part of clean cooking finance be earmarked for scaling up women's businesses? Finally, Frank, let me conclude with a reflection on the panelists that we have here today. And in doing so, recognize the achievements of the government of Kenya for the gender and energy policy launched in November 2019, back to the Clean Cooking Forum in Nairobi. This is the first of its kind of any Ministry of Energy and has strong interlinkages to clean cooking. I'd also like to congratulate the Nepal Electricity Authority for the launch in January 2020 of the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Strategy and Operational Guidelines that the utility is integrating in institutional practices of inspiration, including unelectric cooking. Thank you very much, Frank. Frank, over to you.
At the end, I was getting some noise on the line, but thank you. It's very good and a very rich contribution, I feel. I'm just looking at the time and I realized that my hope that we would have some further time for discussion appears to have been vain, which I was already fearing a bit. I'm very happy to see that there was a lively discussion on the chat while everybody was talking. I see that just now even Dimfna mentions that she's lost the connection, so we'll come back to see if she's coming back or we close up. No, I think it's been a very lively discussion. I hope we do not lose the material which was in the chat, because from my side I've not been able to capture all of the links and the richness, I think, of the discussion there. But I am very happy with the contributions by the whole panel, so thank you all very much for that. I just want to stress, I think, having all of you on the panel sort of underlines the importance of working together on this important agenda. But working together and developing partnership really is hard work. This is more than just meeting each other in events. But in fact, I feel, and in my experience, it also starts with inviting each other in each other's kitchen. So actually look to see, how we're cooking our work. That's why Sheila alluded to that yesterday. We had a discussion of our intended new contribution for domestic biogas in Africa, and we invited a lot of the members here to look at the proposal, come with the comments, and see if we could strengthen the quality. I think I heard many ideas about how we could reinforce each other. So my appeal would be, could we figure out a way that we could actually look in each other's kitchen a bit more? And really develop into an even stronger community that really delivers results on this agenda. So thank you very much for that. I'm just seeing now if I can turn it over to Dimfna for the closing remarks, or if she's still not connected. I guess not. Is anybody else from the Clean Cooking Alliance willing and able to make a few closing comments? Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Rohit.
Thank you, Frank. I see Dimfna is on. I don't know. She seems to be muted. Okay, sorry. I see a message from Astri saying that Dimfna is having trouble with her connection.
Yeah.
I don't seem to hear anyone. So I don't know if there is a quick fix or not. But if not, since we are a little bit over time, Frank, with your permission, I think we will draw to a close then. And I just want to say that again. I think it was some really interesting points made by colleagues. I think ranging from obviously we talked a lot about the links between electricity and clean cooking, not just the electrification of cooking, but how ensuring that clean cooking is part of the dialogue on energy more broadly, or part of planning more broadly. And I fully agree with David's point that he raised earlier, that what we need to be thinking about as a development community is when we are thinking about how deploying our, for example, in the World Bank, our IDA resources, our energy sector lending, how clean cooking is part of that energy dialogue, and definitely looking at sort of innovations in finance, whether it's climate finance or monetizing the co-benefits. These are all areas of work going ahead. I think that as Frank, as you said, there's been an excellent exchanges on the chat. I am terrible at reading and listening at the same time, so I must confess I didn't really read all the comments very carefully, but I sort of glanced at them, and I thank everyone for the very engaged event. I'm really sorry that we were not able to hear from Dimfna at the end, but I do really want to thank the Clean Cooking Alliance for their leadership and for the partnership we have with them on this agenda. So again, with thanks to Loughborough University as well. Thank you, Frank, for moderating this panel. And thank you again to all the panelists for joining us. With that, I would like to sign off and wish you all a very good day. And please stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Thank you, everybody. Good to meet you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.